Montana Territory, 1879. The vast prairie stretched beneath an endless sky, a place where civilization clung to the edges of wilderness like a rider to a wild Mustang. For 21-year-old Katherine James, the frontier had taken everything: her parents to fever, her brother to outlaws, and her hope to the relentless wind that swept across the plains. Standing on the porch of her struggling homestead 10 miles outside of Meadow Creek, she watched storm clouds gather on the horizon and hardened her resolve. Love was a luxury the West did not afford women like her. Out here, a woman alone needed walls around her heart thicker than those of her cabin. "No one stays in this godforsaken place," Katherine whispered to herself as she gathered her chestnut hair into a practical braid, her simple blue cotton dress rippling in the breeze. "And no one stays with me." 3 years alone had taught her that survival required solitude, and attachment only led to devastation. She had her small plot of land, a few chickens, and enough determination to hold back the wilderness another day. That would have to be enough. Inside her modest cabin, Katherine unfolded her father's letter for the 100th time. "When we're gone, Katie," he had written, "find someone to share this dream with." The frontier isn't meant to be faced alone. But she had folded up those words along with her childish fantasies. She didn't need anyone. She couldn't risk it. The frontier had taught her that depending on others was the quickest path to heartbreak. What Katherine wanted was simple: to keep her homestead, to prove that a woman could tame this unforgiving land, to honor her family's sacrifice by surviving. What she told herself she didn't need was the very thing that haunted her dreams: connection, belonging, a hand to hold when the prairie storms rolled through. 20 miles away, Owen Xavier removed his hat as he approached the modest ranch house of the Tremaine cattle operation. At 25, he had spent 7 years riding from Texas to Montana, taking work where he could find it, leaving before roots could take hold. Tall and broad-shouldered with kind hazel eyes that contrasted with his weathered skin, Owen carried himself with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to handling both horses and hardship. "Mr. Tremaine, I appreciate the opportunity," Owen said, shaking the older rancher's hand firmly. His voice carried a slight southern drawl, a remnant of his Texas upbringing. "You came recommended by Ben Miller over in Miles City. Says you're the best horse trainer he's seen come through these parts," Tremaine replied. "We've got 30 wild Mustangs need breaking before the cattle drive. Job should last the summer, maybe longer if you prove useful." Owen nodded, his expression carefully neutral. "I'll break your horses, sir. Though I should mention I don't typically winter anywhere. Been my experience that a man stays too long, the land demands more than he can give." The old rancher studied him. "Son, sounds like you're running from something." "No, sir," Owen replied with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just keeping to the cowboy way. This land breaks those who try to claim it permanently." This was the belief that had sustained Owen through years of drifting. The frontier wasn't a place for putting down roots. It was beautiful but merciless, like loving a woman who could never love you back. His father had died trying to build something permanent in this untamed country, leaving his mother to wither away from grief. Owen had learned his lesson well: stay moving, keep relationships light as trail dust, and never promise what the frontier might take away tomorrow. What he wanted was honest work, open skies, and the freedom of the saddle. What he needed, though he would deny it with his dying breath, was a reason to stop running. 3 days later, a sudden spring downpour caught Katherine by surprise as she returned from town with supplies. The normally dry creek bed swelled rapidly, cutting off the trail to her homestead. Urging her nervous mare forward through the rising water, she felt the wagon lurch sickeningly as a wheel caught in the current. The horse panicked, the harness twisted, and Katherine found herself thrown into the frigid, rushing water. The shock of it stole her breath as the current dragged her downstream. Her sodden skirts tangled around her legs, and the weight of her boots pulled her under. Katherine fought desperately, breaking surface only to be dragged under again. In that moment, she realized with perfect clarity that she would die alone, just as she had lived. Owen was returning from checking boundary fences when he heard the commotion. Through sheets of rain, he spotted the overturned wagon and the struggling figure in the water. Without hesitation, he spurred his horse toward the creek, dismounting in a fluid motion before diving into the churning waters. The current was stronger than it looked, but Owen was a powerful swimmer. He reached the woman just as she went under again, grabbed her around the waist, and fought his way to the bank. They collapsed together on the muddy shore, both gasping for breath. "Are you hurt, ma'am?" Owen asked, helping Katherine to a sitting position. Katherine stared at the stranger, water streaming from her chestnut hair down her face. "My wagon, my supplies," she managed between chattering teeth. "Let's worry about keeping you alive first," Owen said, removing his duster and draping it around her shoulders. "I'm Owen Xavier, working at the Tremaine Ranch." "Katherine James," she replied, clutching the coat around her. "My homestead is 3 miles north." Owen glanced at the sky, the storm showing no signs of abating. "That's too far in this weather. The ranch is closer. We need to get you warm before pneumonia sets in." "I can manage," Katherine insisted, attempting to stand only to have her knees buckle beneath her. Owen caught her before she fell. "No disrespect intended, Miss James, but that creek just tried to claim your life. I'd consider it poor manners to let it have a second chance." Something in his gentle teasing broke through her shock. "Very well, Mr. Xavier. I accept your assistance, but only until the storm passes." As Owen helped Katherine onto his horse and mounted behind her, neither could know that the storm had just changed the course of their lives. For Katherine, whose belief in self-reliance had become a prison, and for Owen, whose freedom had become a different kind of cage, the cloudburst had washed away the first layer of their carefully constructed defenses. At the ranch, Mrs. Tremaine, a motherly woman with efficient hands, helped Katherine into dry clothes while Owen tended to his horse. "That man saved your life," Mrs. Tremaine remarked as she brushed Katherine's hair before the fire. "Owen's only been with us a week, but he's a good sort. Quiet, keeps to himself, seems to prefer horses to people." "We have that in common then," Katherine replied, though she couldn't help remembering the strength of his arms around her in the water, the first human touch she'd experienced in months. When Owen returned, Katherine was seated at the kitchen table, a blanket around her shoulders and a steaming cup of coffee between her hands. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, recognition, perhaps, of a kindred spirit. "Your wagon's still intact," Owen reported. "Wheels damaged, but I can fix it once the weather clears. Your supplies are mostly salvageable." "Thank you," Katherine said simply. "You risked your life for a stranger. I'm in your debt." Owen shook his head. "No debt necessary. Anyone would have done the same." "No," Katherine replied softly. "They wouldn't have." Over the next 2 days, as the storm continued to rage across the prairie, Katherine found herself in the unfamiliar position of accepting help. Owen repaired her wagon, and Mr. Tremaine insisted she stay until the creek subsided. In the evenings, despite her best intentions to keep her distance, Katherine found herself drawn into conversation with Owen as they sat on the ranch house porch. "How long have you been homesteading alone?" Owen asked on the second evening, his voice careful, free of judgment. 3 years, Katherine answered. "Since my brother died." Owen studied her profile in the fading light. "That's a long time to carry such a burden alone." "The alternative is depending on someone who will inevitably leave," she replied. "The frontier ensures that much." A ghost of a smile touched Owen's lips. "Now that's a philosophy I understand." He leaned back in his chair. 6 ranches in 7 years. I've never unpacked my bedroll completely. Why stay in one place when disappointment is guaranteed?" Katherine agreed, surprised to hear her own bitter thoughts echoed by this quiet cowboy. "Exactly." Owen nodded, though something in his eyes suggested he wasn't as convinced as he sounded. When the creek finally receded, Owen insisted on escorting Katherine back to her homestead. What they found was heartbreaking. The small garden washed away, chicken coop damaged, and worst of all, a section of roof torn loose by the wind. Katherine surveyed the damage with stoic resignation. "I've weathered worse," she said, though her voice betrayed her exhaustion. Owen studied the roof. "That needs fixing before another storm hits. Your chickens won't last another night with coyotes getting in, either." "I can manage," Katherine insisted automatically. Owen removed his hat, ran a hand through his light brown hair, and fixed her with a direct gaze. "Miss James, I respect your independence. But there's at least 2 days of work here, and some of it needs an extra pair of hands. Let me help." Consider it a professional courtesy between 2 stubborn frontier folks. His self-deprecating humor disarmed her objections. "Very well, Mr. Xavier. But I insist on compensating you for your time." We'll discuss that after the roof is fixed, he replied, already rolling up his sleeves. For the next week, Owen rode out to Katherine's homestead each morning after completing his duties at the ranch. Together they repaired the roof, rebuilt the chicken coop, and salvaged what they could of her garden. Katherine found herself watching him work, noticing the care he took with each task, the gentle way he handled the frightened chickens, the respect with which he treated her home. More disconcerting were the moments their hands touched passing tools, or when their eyes met over a job completed. Each time, Katherine felt something she had locked away stirring to life, and each time, she reinforced her internal walls. Attachment was dangerous. This arrangement was temporary. Owen Xavier was just passing through, like everyone else. What she couldn't know was that Owen found himself lingering over tasks, inventing reasons to stay a little longer each day. He told himself he was just being thorough, but the truth was that something about Katherine James had gotten under his skin. Her fierce independence reminded him of himself, but beneath it, he recognized a loneliness that mirrored his own. On the 6th day, as they planted new seedlings in her garden, Katherine finally asked the question that had been troubling her. "Why are you really helping me, Mr. Xavier?" Owen paused, dirt on his hands and sunlight catching in his hair. "I suppose because you remind me that we're all just one bad storm away from needing someone." He looked up at her, his expression unusually vulnerable. "And maybe because helping you feels more honest than anything I've done in years." That evening, as they sat on her porch watching the sunset paint the prairie in gold and crimson, Katherine found herself telling Owen about her family, her father's dreams for this land, her mother's quiet strength, her brother's laughter. Stories she had kept locked away because remembering hurt too much. Owen, in turn, spoke of his childhood in Texas, his father's failed ranch, and his mother's descent into grief. "After she passed, I swore I'd never put down roots deep enough to be torn out. Yet you've stayed to help me," Katherine observed. Owen met her gaze steadily. "Some obligations transcend our rules, I suppose." The next morning, Katherine woke to find a small bouquet of prairie wildflowers on her porch step. No note, no explanation needed. She placed them in a jar on her table and tried to ignore how they brightened the whole cabin. When Owen arrived, neither mentioned the flowers, but something had shifted between them. As they worked, their conversation flowed more easily, occasionally punctuated by laughter, a sound that had been absent from Katherine's homestead for too long. That afternoon, as dark clouds gathered on the horizon, Owen spotted riders approaching, 3 men, moving with purpose. "Get inside," he told Katherine, his hand moving instinctively to his pistol. "I know them," Katherine said grimly. "Farley brothers. They've been trying to force me off this land since my brother died. They want the water rights." The leader, a burly man with a cruel twist to his mouth, reined in his horse. "Well now, Miss James, looks like you survived the flood. Shame about that." His eyes shifted to Owen. "Hired help. Friend of the lady." Owen replied evenly, his stance casual but alert. "Something we can help you with?" "Just passing by," the man said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Checking on neighbors after the storm. Though I'd be remiss not to mention that the bank in town is calling in notes on properties damaged in the flood. Shame if Miss James here couldn't meet her obligations." Katherine stiffened beside Owen. "My mortgage is paid through autumn, Mr. Farley. Banks change their minds, especially when properties look abandoned." Farley's gaze swept meaningfully over her modest homestead. "A woman alone can't hold land in these parts. Sooner you accept that, sooner you can move on with dignity." Owen stepped forward, placing himself subtly between Katherine and the riders. "Miss James isn't alone." The implied threat hung in the air for a long moment before Farley tipped his hat mockingly. "We'll see about that. Good day, Miss James." As they rode away, Katherine's hands trembled with anger. "They've been waiting for a chance to take my land. If the bank forecloses." "Is it true? About your mortgage?" Owen asked. Katherine shook her head. "No, but they have connections in town. They could make trouble." Owen's jaw tightened. "Then we'll need to be prepared for trouble." He looked at her intently. "Katherine, why not sell? You could start fresh somewhere safer." "This land is all I have left of my family," she replied, voice breaking. "Would you have me abandon their dream?" "No," Owen said after a moment. "I'd have you fight for it, but not alone." That evening, as they sat by Katherine's small fireplace discussing strategies, Owen revealed a part of his past he rarely shared. I was a lawman briefly in Colorado. Left after a shooting went bad, but I still have connections. I can send telegrams, ask some questions about the Farleys. Why would you do that? This isn't your fight, Katherine said. Owen was silent for a long moment. Maybe I'm tired of not having anything worth fighting for. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither was ready to acknowledge. Katherine looked away first, her heart pounding with unfamiliar hope and familiar fear. The next morning, Owen rode to town to send his telegrams and make inquiries. Katherine tried to focus on her chores, but her thoughts kept returning to Owen's words. For 3 years, she had convinced herself that emotional solitude was safety. Now, in less than 2 weeks, a quiet cowboy with gentle hands and resolute eyes had made her question everything. When Owen returned that evening, his expression was grim. The Farleys have been busy. They've convinced the bank to review all outstanding loans affected by the storm. 3 other small homesteaders are being pressured to sell. What can we do? Katherine asked. Fight back, Owen replied simply. I spoke with Judge Halloran. He's no friend of the Farleys. With his help, we can challenge any foreclosure attempt. We? Katherine questioned softly. Owen met her gaze directly. I said I'd help you, Katherine. I meant it. That night, as a gentle rain pattered on the roof, Katherine lay awake, confronting an uncomfortable truth. In just 2 weeks, Owen Xavier had become more important to her than she had allowed anyone to be in years. More disturbing still was the realization that she trusted him, a luxury she had denied herself for so long. The next morning broke clear and warm. Owen arrived early, bringing news that Judge Halloran had agreed to review the bank's actions. As they walked the perimeter of Katherine's property, discussing improvements that might strengthen her claim, the comfortable silence between them spoke of growing closeness. My father used to say that land remembers those who love it, Katherine said as they paused beside the small family plot where her parents and brother rested. That if you put enough of yourself into the soil, it becomes a part of you. Owen studied the simple wooden crosses. My father believed the same. I thought him a fool for it. And now? Katherine asked. Now I'm not so sure, Owen admitted. Watching you fight for this place, it's changing how I see things. Before Katherine could respond, the sound of approaching horses interrupted them. This time, it wasn't the Farleys but Mr. Tremaine and his foreman. Xavier, Tremaine called, dismounting stiffly. Been looking for you. Got word from the cattle buyer in Cheyenne. Drive's been moved up. We head out in 3 days. Owen's expression froze. 3 days? You said the drive wasn't until August. Markets shifted. It's now or lose the contracts. Tremaine glanced between Owen and Katherine with knowing eyes. Need you back at the ranch today to start preparations. After the rancher departed, silence stretched between them. Katherine fought to keep her expression neutral despite the sinking feeling in her chest. Of course Owen would leave. That had always been the plan. Katherine, Owen began, his voice strained. I need to. You need to fulfill your obligations, she interrupted. I understand completely. You've done more than enough here already. This isn't how I wanted. Please, Katherine said, raising her hand to stop his words. Don't make promises the frontier won't let you keep. Owen looked at her for a long moment, conflict evident in his eyes. I'll come back tomorrow to finish the fence line, he finally said. Katherine nodded, not trusting herself to speak. As she watched him ride away, she berated herself for allowing hope to take root. The frontier taught its lessons harshly, and she had just been reminded of hers. Everyone leaves eventually. True to his word, Owen returned the next day, but the easy companionship of previous days had been replaced by strained politeness. They worked side by side repairing the fence line, their conversation limited to necessary instructions. As the sun began to set, Owen finally broke the uncomfortable silence. Katherine, about the cattle drive. You don't owe me explanations, she interrupted. You've been clear from the start about your intentions. Owen ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Have I? Because I'm not sure I understand them myself anymore. Katherine turned to face him directly. What do you want me to say, Owen? That I'll miss your company? I will. That I've grown accustomed to having you here? I have. But we both know your path leads elsewhere. It always has. And if I'm questioning that path? Owen asked quietly. Then that's something you need to resolve for yourself, Katherine replied, her voice softening. I can't be the reason you stay. only to have you resent me when the wanderlust returns. Owen stepped closer. And what if staying is what I want? Catherine's heart thundered in her chest. Is it? Before Owen could answer, a shot rang out, kicking up dirt at their feet. They both dropped instinctively as two more bullets whizzed overhead. Inside. Now, Owen shouted, drawing his pistol and returning fire toward the tree line as they ran for the cabin. Once inside, Owen positioned himself at the window. Farley's. Most likely, Katherine confirmed, retrieving her brother's rifle from above the door. They're not usually this bold. They know I'm leaving with the cattle drive, Owen said grimly. They're making their move now. The shooting stopped, replaced by an ominous silence. Then a voice called out, Miss James, got a proposition for you. Sign over your water rights, and we'll let you and your cowboy leave with your lives. My father died for this land, Katherine called back, her voice unwavering. My brother too. You'll have to kill me before I sign anything. That can be arranged, the voice responded with a laugh. Owen moved to Katherine's side. They're trying to draw us out. There's at least 3 of them, maybe more. The back door, Katherine whispered. It leads to the root cellar. From there, we can reach the creek bed without being seen. Owen shook his head. Running isn't the answer. They'll just come back. I'm not suggesting we run, Katherine replied, a determined glint in her eye. I'm suggesting we flank them. A slow smile spread across Owen's face. Miss James, you continue to surprise me. Using the concealed route, they circled behind their attackers, discovering 4 men positioned around the cabin. With careful coordination, they managed to disarm 2 of them before the others realized what was happening. In the ensuing confrontation, Owen found himself face to face with the eldest Farley brother. This doesn't end today, Farley snarled as they struggled. Yes, Owen replied, landing a solid punch. It does. When the sheriff finally arrived, summoned by a passing neighbor who heard the gunfire, he found the Farley brothers bound and Katherine treating a bullet graze on Owen's arm. Found these in their saddlebags, the sheriff said, handing Katherine a stack of papers. Forged banknotes with your name on them. Seems they were planning to claim you defaulted on loans you never took. As the sheriff led the Farleys away, Katherine turned to Owen. You're bleeding through the bandage. Let me, marry me. Owen interrupted. Katherine froze. What? Marry me? Owen repeated, his eyes intense. I know it's sudden. I know we've only known each other a few weeks. But when that bullet came at you, I realized something. I've been running my whole life, telling myself I was free, when really I was just afraid. Owen, Katherine said carefully, you're about to leave on a cattle drive. This is hardly the time. I'm not going, he stated simply. What? But your job. I spoke with Tremaine this morning. Asked him to find another man for the drive. I'm staying. Owen took her hands in his. Unless you want me to go. Katherine searched his face. Why would you do that? Because somewhere between pulling you from that creek and fighting off the Farleys, I realized something. The frontier isn't what breaks people, Katherine. It's facing it alone that does the damage. He touched her cheek gently. I don't want to be alone anymore. And I don't think you do either. You hardly know me, Katherine protested weakly. I know enough, Owen replied. I know you're brave and stubborn and loyal to a fault. I know you talk to your chickens when you think no one is listening. I know you're the first person who's made me want to unpack my bedroll completely. Tears filled Katherine's eyes. And what happens when winter comes? When the land tests us again? Then we face it together, Owen said simply. I can't promise the frontier won't throw worse at us than the Farleys. But I can promise I won't run from it. Or from you. Under the vast prairie stars that had witnessed her loneliest moments, Katherine finally allowed herself to believe in possibilities she had long denied. Yes, she whispered, her walls crumbling at last. Yes, I'll marry you. 2 months later, on a perfect summer evening, Katherine and Owen exchanged vows beneath the old cottonwood tree near her cabin, now their cabin. Judge Halloran officiated, and the Tremaines and neighbors from miles around gathered to witness the union that few had expected but all now celebrated. As they shared their first dance as husband and wife, Owen whispered, I've been thinking about your father's words, about putting enough of yourself into the land. And? Katherine asked, her chestnut hair adorned with wildflowers, her simple white dress catching the golden sunset. I think he was right, Owen replied. But it's not just the land that remembers. It's the people too. He looked around at their homestead, at the improvements they had made together, at the future they were building. For the first time in my life, I'm not just passing through. I'm home. 6 months later, as winter settled over the prairie, Katherine and Owen sat before their fireplace. Plans for spring planting spread between them. The cabin had weathered its first blizzard under their joint care, stronger for the reinforcements they had added together. "I had a letter from Tremaine today," Owen said, stroking Katherine's hair as she leaned against him. "The cattle drive made it to Cheyenne without incident. He asked if I regretted not going." "Do you?" Katherine asked, looking up at him. Owen's answer was to place his hand gently on the slight swell of her belly, where their first child grew. Not for a single moment. Outside, the prairie stars sparkled in the clear winter sky, bearing witness to the truth Katherine and Owen had discovered, that the frontier's harshness was matched by its capacity for renewal, that roots could grow strong even in difficult soil, and that some promises, made under those vast skies, had the power to change everything.